Morning. You guys ready to get started? No? All right, well, thanks for coming today. We're going to try to be done and get you guys out of here early because it's so nice outside. But thanks for coming to the symposium today. It's our 10th annual. And I won't talk too much. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Perry Brown. He's going to give you the official welcome to the University of Montana welcome. So Perry is our Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs. So, Dr. Brown.
Thanks, Tony. It's just a pleasure to have you on campus. So on behalf of President Ingstrom and myself, let me welcome you all to the campus. I hope that we're going to see some of you in the fall on this campus. And if there's some juniors or lower classmen here, we hope to see you sometime later here. Let me just tell you first, besides the welcome to here, he used a word that's kind of funny. The provost is simply the chief academic officer of the university. It means academic leader. So everything academic at the University of Montana somehow filters through my office. And that's as simple as I can tell you. So curricula, all the faculty, all the deans, and all the students at the University of Montana somehow have some association with me. So just I'll put into that as a little background because the provost is kind of a funny word that we use to describe the chief academic officer. Anyway, you're here for a symposium. You're here to present things that you've been doing throughout the year with regard to health, and particularly I think some air quality. I think is what we're all about right now, and this ought to be a fun day for you. I would tell you that the University of Montana has a lot of really strong science programs. And there are programs in sort of the basic science areas like chemistry and physics and geosciences and biology, those programs. But when you get into the applied areas, all of the health areas that we do here, and forestry and conservation and geosciences and things like that, really strong science programs here at the University of Montana. And so I would really just promote this as a place for you to look at for a college education, whether it's starting out for a bachelor's degree or thinking about graduate school after you've earned a bachelor's degree, maybe somewhere else. This is a great place to come. We just graduated about 2,900 students this last weekend on a beautiful Saturday morning, and they are happy and moving out to employment, and some of them not employed. They want to go around the world or something like that, and they're going to do that as well. But it's a great place for education. So have a great day. Enjoy each other's presentations. Enjoy sharing what you have been doing this year with the judges, with faculty members, with other students here, and just have fun at the University of Montana, because getting an education, being part of a university environment, and that's what you are today, is really fun. Some of us never left. We just like it to be around colleges all the time. I've been in 4 universities in the West, always stayed in the Western U.S., but in 4 different universities, and it is just exhilarating to be with people who are interested in learning, interested in having fun learning, and when we see what the accomplishments are of our students in terms of their science, their research accomplishments, their study abroad accomplishments, and all kinds of things like that, it's just absolutely amazing. So have a great day, have fun, and welcome to the University of Montana.
All right.
I say with you, as I said to her this a few minutes ago, I left a meeting to come over here, and I've got to go back because I've left all the deans of the university unsupervised, and I need to get them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I echo what Provost Brown said about this being a wonderful place to come to school. So I'm from Houston, Texas originally, and came up here to graduate school and never left. So it's a wonderful place to be and to go to school. So I'm going to give you a couple of slides on what is going to happen today. First off, just some logistics. Maybe the most important thing you'll learn all day is where the bathrooms are. Straight across the foyer there, across the hall. Left is the ladies, I think, and right is the men. Anybody need a parking pass, specifically teachers or our judges, see Desiree. See Desiree. Anybody that needs information on your posters, because we have a concurrent poster session going on, see Carolyn Hester in the back there. Okay, so you might see a camera that's floating around today taking pictures of you, and we also have MCAT that's filming us today. So Ron Scholl is in the back there, so everybody say hello to Ron. So when you least expect it, you're probably going to be on camera or a picture taken. So always have nice, bright, shiny, happy faces and smiling, happy faces smiling on your faces. So, that was a mouthful. All right, so here's how it's going to work today. So we have 16 total presentations. We are going to start at 10 o'clock and try to knock out 8 presentations. We're then going to take a little break, and the folks that are giving posters will all go stand by your posters, and during the break, and probably leading into a little bit after the break, you'll be interviewed by Dr. Lisa Blank, who is our evaluator right here. So, Lisa. And then Carolyn, and there's actually a team of judges that are outside looking at your posters right now. So at 11:15, you'll come back in, we'll make the call, you come back in, we'll knock out the next set of 8 posters or presentations, and then we'll do lunch, then we'll come back in, do some quick evaluations, and then we'll have some fun and give out some free stuff, some awards. Okay? So just really fast about this program. So this is a big deal for us. This is our 11th year of the program, our 10th annual symposium. So now we're in double digits. And it started actually with one student at Big Sky High School. A little bit of ground rules. So if I mention a name of a school, don't be afraid to say, woo, Big Sky, all right? Or Hellgate or Corvallis. Who am I missing? Sentinel. All right? So it's interesting. We got Sentinel back there, Big Sky, Hellgate, Corvallis. So 4 schools here today. So don't be afraid to show school spirit. So if I mention Big Sky High School, who started the program, Emily Weiler, who's worked with us for 10 years, is a Big Sky graduate. So the program actually started 11 years ago. We had one student in Mr. Jones's class. And if I say the name of your teacher also, you can especially boo them. Well, I mean, did I say boo? I mean cheer them, okay? So the program actually started at Big Sky High School with Mr. Dave Jones back in 2002, 2003. So we gave some air sampling equipment to Isaac Schmidt, and then he sampled in 16 of his classmates' homes, and the program has kind of grown since then. So right now, 2013, 2014, we're in 16 schools throughout Montana, Idaho, and Alaska, working with about 750 students just like you. So just, you know, I was looking at some photos last night. I was going to try to dig up some old, photos to embarrass everybody, and the only ones that I could really find that are embarrassing were about me, so I tried to not put those in there. But just a little bit about, past years. We have met some very interesting students throughout the year. Over the last 10 years, seen some very interesting presentations, had some interesting and questionable experiences also, and posters and everything else. But, the judges that volunteer their time to work with us and evaluate your presentations, we couldn't do it without them. So in past years, we've had coaches and athletes, Bobby Houck, Robin Selvig, Eric Burgist, TV personalities, Russ Thomas, Steve Fetveit, Robin Yost, Ian Marquardt, Mark Haka. Okay. We've had wizards, Garen Smith, or Gee Whiz. Anybody seen Gee Whiz in your schools when you're little guys and gals? And then we've also had celebrities that we've invited that have turned us down. Oprah Winfrey, Al Gore. And then, sadly, Brock, this year, Hank Green turned us down. Actually, he never got back to us, so didn't even get to the point of turning us down. The students, there's some things that have been really funny. You look back on it over the years that have happened, and, loading the presentations at the last second, before they give their presentation or between the breaks. Yes, I will load your presentations. If anybody is wondering that right now, come see me during the break, and I'll load up your presentation again if you make changes. So that can happen. Corvallis High School, 5 years ago, when you guys wore the dust track and collected samples and went to school and measured what you're breathing all day long and the looks that you got while you were collecting samples, You know, that was a pretty cool idea, and one that we've actually stolen and wrote in grants about. So that was a great idea, and that was the first time that anybody had done that. So way to go, Corvallis High School. Yeah. Hellgate High School. Sir Nurmic Nurmal. Remember him, Melissa? So this was actually an honorary member of a group from Hellgate High School. It was on a filtration unit. The students use it as part of their class, their presentation. He was on the filtration unit, sat up there with the rest of the students. So Sir Nurmic is actually on our wall in our lab at the University of Montana. So way to go, Hellgate. Big Sky High School. So let me just start with this one. So the one that immediately pops out is when the student came down, and no names will be named, and he looked up at the screen, he looked at his classmates, and he said, "I've never seen this before." So needless to say, it was, you know, everybody else did a good job except for that one student. Dave, you know what I'm talking about. Big Sky redeemed themselves a couple years later and won overall grand prize here at the Symposium, I think 2 years ago. So Big Sky has seen the lows and the highs of the symposiums. One thing that remains constant are the great teachers that we work with, the judges, the really smart students that come to this, and the amazing ideas that you come up with every single year. So these are just some slides that we have. This was 2 years ago, and one thing I'll point out before we get too much farther, this kid right there, his name is Brandon, and there's Brett's right there, Brett Taylor from Sentinel High School. So keep Brett and Brandon in mind here shortly. I'll talk about them. So these are the winners from the last few years. So 2009, the effects of cooking methods on PM 2.5 and indoor air quality. So Andrea and Cassie Moog from Libby, so they were valedictorians. They're twins. So they actually came here to the University of Montana, worked in our lab for the last 5 years and 4 years, and have graduated and doing big and, you know, great things now. 2010, so this is Brandon Shannon. I'll point out that he was by himself. He did the project by himself, came here, did the presentation by himself, won the symposium by himself, and then the next year came back by himself and won again. So a really smart kid, and I think he is on campus. I think he had such a bad experience with the symposium that he's now in economics or something, right? Law school. So anyway, super smart kid, and you know, he won twice back to back as a single person, $150. So he did very, very well. 2012, Big Sky High School won. Kyle Brester, difference of particulate matter at roundabouts and stop-controlled intersections. So Kyle graduated, came to University of Montana, has been working in our lab for the last 2 years now, and a really key figure in our Montana State Science Fair. Last year, Libby High School won the overall presentation prize, differences in radon levels, and did a great job. They're not here this year, but they will be back next year. So who's it going to be this year? You? All right, you. So Sentinel, all right. So Hellgate, Corvallis, what do you guys think about that? We'll see about that. So here's the rules. Okay, so poster sessions. We have about 15 posters that are set up. Outside, poster judging has already began. At 11 o'clock when we go to break, if you have a poster out there, go stand by it, and our evaluator and the judges will talk to you about your poster. Top 3 prizes will be awarded, $50, $75, and $100 for first, second, and third, or third, second, first. Presentations. So we have 16 presentations that we're going to get through, 5 minutes, and I'm going to keep the lights and keep the timer. And at 5 minutes, the lights come up, and you have 2 minutes for questions and answers. So don't be afraid to ask a question. The more questions that you guys have, the more fun this is going to be. Okay? Don't just leave it to the judging panel to ask the questions. So lots of questions. Top 3 presentations get first, second, and third award. First prize is $150, which is actually not really accurate. So it's a $150 gift card to the University of Montana bookstore. Second prize is $125, and third prize is $100 gift card. So to make all this happen, usually there's people that bring food that try to bribe the judges. I don't see any food today. But Your judges are right here, and I'll introduce all 5 of them real fast. So the first one that we have is Ben Schmidt. So it's courtesy applause, don't let it go to your head. So Ben Schmidt, if you've ever seen anything related to air pollution or forest fire smoke on the TV, so Ben is the person that you probably see. So Ben is kind of the guru of air pollution. He works at the Missoula City County Health Department and has been there since 1991 and has been a judge for many, many years for us. Is this 10? God, all 10. Okay. Jen Fowler. So Jen is a staff member in the Department of Physics and Astronomy here at the University of Montana. She's an education specialist and a project director for the Borealis program funded through the Montana Space Grant Consortium. So welcome, Jen. Thank you. Nancy Mara. So Nancy is our honorary judge, as she is every single year now that she comes and judges for us, because she used to work with our team in putting this together and was our education coordinator for a long time. So we were sad to see Nancy go, but now she has an even better job in the School of Education here. And her official title is Director of Field Placements and Student Teaching. So if you're interested in being a teacher, and Nancy will find you a job, right, basically? So be nice to Nancy, and it will take you places. So the next person we have is Kim Davitt. So Kim is manager of Montana Initiatives for the American Lung Association of the Pacific, Mountain Pacific. She runs her Healthy Air campaign in the state. She's involved with local air quality councils and statewide air quality councils, and is another one of those gurus in air quality. And we're very thankful that she is here today. So thanks, Kim. Last but certainly not least is Heidi Miley. And everybody say hi to Heidi. So Heidi's been nice enough to join us for the last 5, 6 years, something like that.
Yeah,
and
at least 5.
yeah, so you've seen Heidi if you turn on your TV at 10 o'clock and 6 and 5 also?
5, 6, and 10.
5, 6, and 10, you've seen Heidi. So we're very...
Doesn't have 3 a day.
So we're very lucky to have Heidi today. She's at KECI TV. So thank you, judges, for coming today, and it's going to be a fun and fast and furious 2.5 hours here. So with that, it's go time. And so the way this is going to work, it's going to be a random drawing of presentations. So I don't have any idea which one I'm going to choose, so I'm just going to randomly pick one. And when I do, when I pull it up, then as quickly as you can, come down here. And then I'll show you how to work the microphone, and we'll get you all set up, and then you got 5 minutes, okay? So let's do Corvallis, and which one is it gonna be? How about Ethan?
Alrighty, okay, so I did how the temperature will affect air quality. This was just at my house over a period of 9 hours. I wish I had more time to do this, but I'd been sick most of the week, but here goes. So knowing that particles accelerate as they heat up, I just assumed that the air quality would improve as the temperature rises. So procedure step 1 was just to get the dust track and the impactor. And then this is the type of heater I used. It's forced air. I'm not sure how many people have this, but if you don't have a boiler or a wood furnace, you'll most likely have one of these. So the first step for my actual testing was to set my heater to 65 degrees, and I just ran the dust track for 3 hours. And then I did the same thing again for 70 and 75 degrees. And then here are my results for 65 degrees. Let's see, which one is the pointer? Is it working? No. Okay. There it is. Okay. So as you can see, there are some pretty high levels, and I wanted to test 65 degrees, but it was 70 outside, and that kind of skewed my results a little. when I checked the thermometer, it was about 67. And then, as you can see here, with 70, it actually was 70 this time. They are a bit lower. The levels were slightly lower. And then when I got it up to 75 degrees, they just lowered immensely. It was kind of shocking. And then here's a comparison of all three. As you can see, 75 was very, very low compared to 65 and 70. And then I concluded based off of my rather limited test results, that the higher the temperature, the lower, or the better the air quality. So there you go.
Questions for Ethan?
So the temperature sensor, you have a thermometer outside, you can make a keep track of temperature?
My thermos, it has a thermometer connected to it, so I could tell what the indoor temperature was.
You know if there was anything else that could potentially have impacted the results? I mean, like, is everything else pretty much constant, or any other activities?
Well, the high points on the first two graphs, I had it near a vent, so I guess the vent was blowing air in, and that really skewed the first hour or so of each graph. And other than that, there shouldn't have been anything. I had everything downstairs, all my animals.
So the third one, that was away from the vent, the 75-degree one?
The 75-degree run, the vent, the outdoor temperature had raised to 75, so I didn't even need to set the heater, so there was no vent, which didn't really change the results at all.
All right, thank you, Ethan.
Hello. Okay. So I'm Trace Tinkle.
I'm Brady Henthorn.
Luke Bafimo.
And we're from Hellgate High School, and our teacher is Miss Henthorn. And so what we did was we compared radon and PM 2.5 concentration levels around the Missoula Valley.
So our question was, does the location around Missoula affect the concentration of radon and particulate matter around Missoula?
And so we decided that, especially since it's winter, your location around the Missoula Valley wouldn't have dramatic effects on the concentration levels of radon and PM 2.5 around the valley.
And first, for testing our radon, we tested in our basement for 48 hours just to get a more accurate reading. And then also for the dust tract, we ran it for 24 hours from 12 to 12 in an exterior location.
So here are some graphs of the data that we collected. This first one here was collected up the Rattlesnake. You can see that the peak right there, I don't know if you can, was around like 6, 7, so it might be the busy time that everyone's arriving home from their days. And then it's lower because, it might be everyone's out at work or at school. This next one was out in Tura. It peaked a little bit later, around 8 or 9, but it might have been because they had longer days, so they were arriving at that time. This one was up to Linda Vista. It peaked twice. Is because they had a barbecue out there, which could have a big effect on it. And then the last one was up Mullen Road, which didn't peak, so I mean, maybe just they didn't live there or something, because it's really clean air. And then here is just one comparing all of our data. just to see the differences in the particulate matter.
So again, this is kind of just a summary of our data. Again, especially on Linda Vista, you see the maximum is quite a bit higher than the other levels, but on average, the averages were relatively close. The lowest being Mullen Road and the highest, again, being Linda Vista. But you want to go back one slide? If you look, if you take out of account the peaks, which is, again, influenced by stuff like the barbecue at my house, which, looking back, probably wasn't the smartest decision. But the barbecue at my house, if you don't take into account the peaks, everything seemed pretty similar throughout the day.
And then again, for our radon level results, we decided there was really no connection between location, just because I guess it's really dependent on just the design of your house. If you have a better like ventilation and things like that, to you know, just to have higher or lower levels. And then also for our particulate matter, all houses were below the EPA of 0.035 milligrams per meters cubed, which is good. But then also it's hard to really find an exact thing because we only tested our own homes, but we should probably test more houses to get a more accurate reading about the area.
And I also want to point out that I live in Tura, and that radon level is kind of dangerous. So we got it fixed, and now it's down to 4.4. So we got something good out of this this experiment.
Yeah, and again, just adding, like, looking at the data, we just didn't see a relation between the PM 2.5 levels and the radon level, and especially when it's ventilation, it's hard to see the relation. We decided there wasn't a relation between the two different levels.
So for our conclusion, we came up with, our data didn't show a link between the particulate matter and the radon, depending on the location. We came up with the conclusion that it was more affected by just what is going on that's surrounding the testing area.
So improvements, because of just our limited number of dust tracks, we couldn't test the PM 2.5 level over the same 24-hour period. So although in our graphs during the day, the PM 2.5 level in the air was around the same besides those peaks, it wasn't the same 24-hour period. So we would have had a better control if we had tested it over the same 24-hour period. And then also, even though we were testing outside the homes, it really could be affected by if a car drives up and parks and goes in the garage or whatever. So it would have been good if we could have tested outside multiple homes in that same area. And then it'd also just be interesting to test through the different seasons and see how, especially since it's winter, it's snowy, there's not a lot of pollen or stuff going on in the air. So it'd be cool to test in the season to see maybe one area has more trees, so it produces more pollen, or just to test during different seasons.
Thank you.
Questions? Yes?
Can you remind me of the location of your PM monitor?
We just found an exterior location outside the home. Either I had like a covered deck that I could put it on, or just something where it'd be safe out of the elements, but was still getting the level of the outside air. Any more questions?
What was your rationale for testing outside PM and inside?
Well, the radon has to be plugged in to an outlet, and we just didn't, especially outside, because radon tends to disperse and it collects more in basements. We just decided to test for it in the basement. But since we wanted to see the PM 2.5 levels in the air in the low area, opposed to the house specifically, we wanted to test the outside air. Because then again, with the PM 2.5, the concentration could really be affected by the ventilation of the house, how it's heated, and we wanted to disregard that.
So can radon detect is outdoor and indoor?
I believe it can be. I just don't think with the equipment that we have.
All right, thank you.
So just a couple of announcements real fast. You may have looked in your bag and seen this little flyer right here. So if you wanted more information about the University of Montana, you fill this out, and there's a drop box actually outside by the registration desk, and we're going to have a drawing. 3 drawings will get a prize at the end. So whoever fills this out, you may get your name called for another prize. They actually have Vision University of Montana research magazines too. So grab one of these on your way out too.
All right, hi, I'm Emily Herning.
I'm Katie D'Amico.
I'm Jillian Keith.
And I'm Shay Byerly.
And we did our project on the comparison of carbon monoxide levels at a roundabout in a traditional intersection. So our question was, how do different traffic configurations, such as a roundabout in a traditional intersection, affect the levels of carbon monoxide in the air? So carbon monoxide is a deadly, colorless, and odorless gas, so obviously it's dangerous for our well-being, and it's produced by equipment we use every day, such as generators, cars, lawnmowers, and power washers. It reduces the oxygen going to the heart or other organs, and short-term carbon monoxide exposure further affects the body of people with existing heart conditions, so it's very dangerous to our health. So our hypothesis was that the roundabout would have less carbon monoxide than the intersection because the cars are constantly moving and it's a steady flow, while at intersections the cars are stationary and it's detrimental to air quality. And the faster traffic flow of the roundabout results in less pollution and better fuel economy and less wear on vehicles.
All right, so we used Alaska, our carbon monoxide detector, and we split into 2 groups and monitored the 2 intersections, and then we allowed the tests to run for an hour. We ran one on April 14th between 4:30 and 5:30, and May 6th between 7:30 and 8:30 in the morning. We used the intersection of South and Higgins, and then the Higgins Street roundabout. And both of our cars were facing north, and then both cars were approximately 5 feet southeast from the intersections. And both intersections were on Southwest Higgins to ensure similar traffic flows, and the data was collected the same distance from each configuration. The tests were done at the same exact time on the same day.
And these are the pictures of where we did our tests. So that's the Higgins roundabout, and then that's the intersection on the Higgins and South. And then in our morning graph data, there was higher levels of carbon monoxide at the intersection than at the roundabout. And then on our evening graph data, you can see that there were spikes of carbon monoxide at the intersection than at the roundabout.
Okay, so for the morning test, our data does not support our hypothesis because the p-value is more than 0.05. And for the evening test, the data does support our hypothesis because the p-value is less than 0.05, and our mean and standard deviation are noticeably higher than the morning tests. And possible explanations for our data in the morning test not supporting our hypothesis is because the air is possibly heavier in the morning and the temperature is cooler, and in the morning and at night the traffic patterns could be differing. So our conclusion is that the test indicates that the data from the intersection had higher levels of carbon monoxide than the roundabout, and to limit variability, we would collect data in the summer and we would also do a traffic count. Thank you.
Any questions?
Right there.
Yes. Yes.
According to your statistical test there, the morning did not have any significant differences. If you were able to collect more data points, do you think that might have changed? It looked like there were still peaks at the intersection.
Yeah, I think if we did more tests, it would even out, and the variables that could be affecting it, like there just wasn't as much traffic in the morning, it could help support our hypothesis.
It was also a very nice day that day, so there might have been more people walking and riding their bike than driving because it was nice and we like to enjoy the weather.
Whoever asks the next question gets the extra fruit snacks.
Are you serious?
All right.
Why?
Keep going.
Wow, that was awful.
I just got to think of a question.
So do you think the cars vary from like where the intersection is to where the roundabout is? Like different, I don't know, trucks or just cars?
So like if there's a truck, are you asking if that produces more carbon monoxide than a car, or? Most of our spikes are like semi-trucks and stuff like that because they do produce more than the regular car does. Brittany.
Did you get an even amount of the different types of cars so your results would be somewhat similar?
We did not do that in our project, but I guess we could like count how many different cars walk by, or not walk by, drive by, because that would probably limit variability. Yes?
Were the locations of the intersection and the roundabout, like were they somewhat close to each other, or were they?
They're right down the road from each other, so probably less than a mile down the road from each other. So like the wind would blow and it wouldn't affect our data because we're on the same way. Yes?
Did you get an average of the two by any chance, even though you didn't put it up?
Oh, yeah, the average are our means. We can go back and show you. The mean of the evening was 2.6, and the mean of the morning was 0.008.
So obviously the evening is much higher.
Let me rephrase that question. I mean the mean of the evening and the morning together.
Oh, we did not do that.
Yep.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right. Hi, I'm Shayla Hansen, and I'm from Corvallis High School. Woo! All right, and I did my experiment on my workplace, Snap's Grill. It's a little burger shop or joint down in downtown Hamilton, and we make a lot of burgers, so I figured the smoke making burgers would affect the quality in downtown Hamilton because there's a lot of smoke, obviously. If you see that burger, we make a lot of particulate matter. So we are very popular, and usually you can go outside and you can just smell the burgers out there. So my hypothesis was, yes, that Knapp's Grill will affect the air quality in downtown Hamilton because of all the smoke coming off of the burgers and all the fun stuff we make. So what I did was I got the dust track, and I decided I was going to do 4 different tests around Knapp's Grill. And so there's one right outside Knapp's door, one across the street, one down on this street corner, and another one down here at that street corner. But to also get a control group of just what downtown Hamilton would be just away from Knapp's Grill. There's the Bitter Public Library down here. There's no burger places down there, and it's a fairly safe area that everyone's around, and to get a good air quality of just what downtown Hamilton would be like. So the first test I did was right outside the door of Knapp's, and right here is where the EPA says that it's unhealthy amount of PM 2.5 particles, and the levels was right here about 15. And then I went to the right street corner and saw that it went down just a tiny bit, not much at all, but still about that 15 level. And then I went to the left street corner, which was that one that was a little farther away, and there's also a traffic light going to the highway from there, so there was quite a bit of traffic going by. So those are those peaks, are cars driving by. And so that one got a little skewed, but it shows that just how much the particles can move just by a car driving by. And then once across the street, and once again, we're back in this about 15 range, a little lower even. And then I went to the library and found out that the levels there were pretty much the same as over by Knapp's Grill. So I was very confused at that, actually, considering how much we're grilling burgers. And the time that I went was about 3 o'clock, if you can see. Like, all these are about the 2:30 to 3 o'clock, and we're pretty busy at that point. So we were making lots of burgers. So the conclusion was that right outside the door and to the left and right street corners of Knapp's, it's only slightly higher than across the street and at the library, which was only like 2 micrograms per meter. It's not bad for our health, so Knapp's Grill is not a bad influence on the air quality, and we can continue making burgers without affecting everyone's health. Yay! So, things that I could have done to make this experiment better is to test on multiple days, because, you know, maybe there was more or less. I did it during a rush, but you never know when people are going to be there. Multiple times during the day, get a few tests when we weren't busy and when we were busy. And my tests were 10 minutes each, so I could have let the test go on longer and see how it affected. And then I could test it before 11 o'clock, which is when Knapp's opens, and see if it just had an effect on all of Hamilton. And I also could have tested the air quality inside Knapp's to see if it was all just stuck inside the building there, because that gets pretty smoky. And so, yeah, questions? Yes.
What did the owners of Knapp's Grill think about your test?
Well, I asked him first, considering I work there and I could lose my job if it was bad. But he was fine. He was actually really interested to see on how much of an impact he does have on the community, and was happy to find out that he's not bad.
Did you look at wind direction relative to the sampler and where the smoke can be generated?
No, I did not. I didn't even think about the wind. I just figured since chimney comes right out the top of Knapp's, I figured it would just dissipate around there. It was a nice day. Like, it wasn't like I was outside and I'm getting blown over because of the wind, so.
You had done the 4 tests then, right, and all in about the same amount of time, but that was all on the same day?
Yes, all on the same day, did them right after each other. Any other questions? He's got more fruit snacks. Yes.
The burger's really good at Knapp's Grill.
The burgers are fantastic, the best on this side of the Mississippi. Come on down to Knapp's, guys. Right. Where? Oh, yes.
Why didn't you do it inside? It seems obvious to me that it would be best inside to test, but why didn't you?
Honestly, I needed to get to work, so I did all those tests, like, while the lunchtime was having their rush. I work night shifts, so they were just getting done with their lunch rush there and stuff, and then once their lunch rush is over, I have to go in, change, and get ready for my shift, so I just didn't have time to go inside and do it.
Okay.
Anything else?
Did you ever think about maybe recording the data during the same time to get more accurate reading?
I probably could have done that, but I only have 1 dust track, so if I had more, I probably would have done that.
All right.
Okay.
I'm Brandon Gleiss.
Hi, I'm Carson Panion.
I'm Doug Minke.
I'm Eric Trikel.
We're all from Hellgate High School, and we tested to see if the levels of particulate matter reached dangerous levels in the gymnasium.
So chalk is made out of calcium carbonate. It is calcium carbonate. It is a majority of chalk is PM10, and we chose this project because two of our members of the group are gymnasts. Question. And our question was, does the amount of chalk particles in the gymnastics facility affect the health of any gymnasts and the air quality?
And again, we were interested because two of our members are gymnasts. So our hypothesis was that the chalk particles in the gymnastic facility would increase to dangerous levels during and after gymnastic activities. The variables of our project were the amount of activity in the gym when the project was going on, and the dependent variable was how much of the chalk particles were in the air. The controls were the gym facility that we went to and the position of the dust tract in the gym.
So our procedure was to set up the dust track in a part of the gym near the bar area where a lot of chalk is used with the PM10 attachment on it. We did two separate tests. One test while there was little to no activity in the gym, like during the night, and then another test during the day when there were kids practicing in the gym and a lot of chalk was being used.
This is the test that we had that started, it started late in the afternoon and went through the night so we could see how low the levels of chalk went. And when there was little activity in the gym, it was completely safe. But then in the morning, the next day, there was a competition in the facility that we tested at. So there was some pretty high spikes, and it became unhealthy pretty quickly after the chalk started being used for the competition. The next test we did started early afternoon at 4:45, and it almost immediately was above the EPA recommended levels for the PM10 and stayed there until well after the competition had already ended and the practices had ended.
So the amount of chalk particles in the air reached dangerous levels during this time. I mean, from the time of little to no activity during the night into the practice, the amount of particles in the air increased by 2 orders of magnitude. So, and then after practice was over, the levels decreased after about 4 hours to back to safe levels. So our conclusion was that the data was supported, or our hypothesis was supported based on the data we got from the tests that during gymnastics activity the chalk particles do reach dangerous levels in the air. So
We would have liked to do additional tests to better our experiment using a filter to see if perhaps we could keep the PM10 levels under the EPA recommended levels using an air filter. And then if not, if it didn't remain under the PM10 or the EPA recommended levels of PM10 particles, that we could see how much quicker it would fall to safe levels. So if people were remaining in the facilities after practice, that it would be healthy for them to stay in there instead of it remaining unhealthy after the practice had finished.
Are there any questions?
Did you have the dust track on the floor?
We had it up on a little stool.
So it's the dust, did you try higher?
We didn't.
We did not know.
What is the EPA standard for the PM10?
it's 0.25 milligrams per yeah, per meter cube. So.
Anecdotally, have any of the gymnasts noticed any health effects from the elevated levels of PM10, respiratory effects, or?
I got it. So I am one of the gymnasts, and personally, like, you can tell sometimes it gets harder to breathe. Well, not really harder to breathe, but you can tell, like, you're breathing in something you normally wouldn't, and so, but it doesn't, I'm completely fine. I've had no problems with my respiratory system, so.
Yeah.
Now that you know this, is there anything that could be done to mitigate that in your gym?
Maybe just put up air filters around the gym where a lot of chalk is being used, but we didn't get to test how much of an effect that would have on the air, so we would have liked to do more tests, but time just didn't really permit us to do it, so.
That value you used for unhealthy air, going back to the earlier question, was that meant to be the EPA 24-hour standard or some other number?
Yeah, that was, we researched it and we couldn't find like the EPA recommended value of PM10, but there was a calculator where we saw, where we put in the AQI value where it reaches unhealthy levels, and then that transferred it into PM10.
You use the air quality index.
Yeah.
Just a health-based warning system or a multi.
So it is over a 24-hour period. So since there were only gymnasts in the gym for about 4 hours, it didn't reach that 24-hour period.
Because the real standard is actually 150 people. So.
That's, we did unhealthy for everyone. That 150 is for sensitive groups such as young children and elders. Since we're not young children, we did unhealthy for all groups. Sorry.
So you did orientate that towards your specific?
Yes.
Yeah, right.
I should have mentioned that, but yes. So that's where that number came from.
Is there anything other than chalk that would potentially cause spikes in PM10 levels?
In the gym, we have a foam pit, and those particles might get in the air, but where we set up the dust track wasn't really near the foam pit, so the majority of it should have been the chalk.
All right, thank you.
Okay, our project was radon levels at Sentinel High School. I'm JC Hertzy.
I'm Darcy Jepka.
And I'm Jess McMillan.
And our question was, are there differences in radon levels throughout Sentinel High School?
Oops.
Darcy.
I didn't do that. Okay. So just a little background information. Radon is really dangerous if levels are above 4 picocuries per liter. It's released by radium as it decays radioactively. It's invisible, tasteless, and odorless.
So, our hypothesis was that the older portion of the schools will have higher radon levels than the newer additions because the older additions have a lack of protection from radon. And the annexes will have the lowest level because they were built on solid concrete foundations with lower access. Okay.
We used a safety siren Pro Series 3 radon gas detectors. The variables we tried to control were the length of time collecting data, which was 48 to 72 hours, and our location of testing sites in and around Sentinel High School. And our process was we found a place where window and light exposure was limited because that apparently messed with the testers. We plugged the machine in and reset it, and then we left it for at least 48 hours.
We chose our locations based on the age of the building and accessibility. And this picture here, can you point to the, is a picture of the exposed soil that we have in the basement.
That is our radon sampler.
And the bottom one is just a picture of the window well outside of Sentinel. Okay, so for our lowest levels of our school, we have a boiler room and a basement. And the boiler room levels were really low. It was 2, and that's mainly because our boiler room's built so nothing can get in and nothing can get out. Our basement was kind of a different story. We had all our levels were over 4, which is really dangerous. We did 2 in the actual basement, and then we have the exposed soil that you saw we tested in there, and we got 10.8.
Okay, and on our first floor, we took actually quite a few samples. Outside was 1.4, which is actually pretty high for radon. And there are 2 different sections. So the science wing's the new part, and it was built in 2003, and it was 2.5. And then the rest of the school was built in 1956. And so like the theater was built in 1956, and it's basically the same level. And then our annexes were all really low, so we didn't have to worry about those.
And this is our second floor of Sentinel, and all of the results are 1.0 picocuries per liter or less, because it's on the second floor and radon does not rise to the upper levels of school.
Okay, so this is the graph we made, and it just kind of shows how high the levels in the basement were compared to the rest of the school.
So in conclusion, we saw that radon levels were higher in the older portion of Sentinel, which was built in 1956, because radon wasn't really a big concern at that time, and people didn't really know how to protect themselves from it.
And this supported our hypothesis because the older buildings usually don't have protection against radon exposure, and as the lower levels don't either.
Thank you for your time.
Not really too concerned. Are there any questions? No?
You keep on talking about protection that is made later on. What?
There wasn't really any protection made later on. Like I know when we moved houses, we had to put in a fan in our basement to kind of disperse some of the radon. There's none of that protection at Sentinel right now. So.
Did you let the school board know?
Yeah, we did.
We let the principal know.
Okay.
So.
In your research, what are the hours of exposure that are dangerous or okay? How many hours should you be exposed to that type of thing? Is it, because when you're in your home, you might need your home longer, but at school, you might be at that given hour.
It's kind of just, it kind of builds up. It's not like if you're exposed for an hour, you're gonna get lung cancer or anything. It's just kind of built up over your lifetime. But I don't really know levels and how long you're exposed to. I don't know how that affects it.
In the slide that you had comparing values between, if you go back one, right now.
Okay.
So the auditorium that's down here, 2.6, and that's an older section
Yeah.
of the building, and then the science wing is 2.5 of the
Yeah.
newer section. Is there an explanation why they're the same?
We actually don't know why. But, and it's, neither of them have basement below them. It's just kind of just flat there, so.
Which section does have the basement below?
The basement is right out here. And then there's the boiler room up here.
So how come it was higher in the basement than in the first floor or second floor?
Radon tends to settle in the basement and just stays in the lower levels.
When you were talking about the house that you bought and that you had to do a mitigation system in the basement there, and then you were talking about protection at Sentinel before 1956, does Sentinel have some of those things as well?
I don't think so, but I'm assuming once, because they know this, that they'll try and fix that. So.
What was the year for the science wing?
The science wing was 2003.
height from the basements could have had something to do with it?
I think it's more of the basement, like where the basement is in relation to the rest of the school, that has more of an effect on the levels than how new they are, but.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
So I'm Nicole Holmquist, and we are in Mr. Taylor's Chemistry 2 class. And our air quality research project was done on the radon testing in West Central Montana. So our question was, is there a difference in the radon levels in a house with and without a basement? And then that map is just showing. So our hypothesis is that the radon levels will be higher in a house with a basement due to the proximity to the substrate, which is the soil, and the ventilation in basements tends to be a lot poorer than ventilation in your top floors. Okay, so this is our background information, and radon is just a colorless, odorless gas, and it's formed from the radioactive decay of radium in the substrate or the rocks in the soil, and it's measured in picocuries. And the average radon level in the indoor areas in West Central Montana is determined by the tester, and the average is 6.9 picocuries.
Okay, and then this pie graph is just showing the average percentage of levels in West Central Montana, and so as you can see, is higher is the most prominent in West Central Montana, so we don't have very good radon levels.
So the importance of testing radon can cause serious health effects, and one being lung cancer.
Okay, so our methods is we just used the Safety Siren Pro Series 3 radon gas detector. When we placed it in a house with a basement, it was an enclosed area, and the floor was concrete, and the nearest window was on the other side of the room, approximately 4.5 meters away.
And the radon detector that was placed in a house without a basement, it was in an open space with a window that was approximately 6 meters away.
And the surrounding substrate for both houses is alluvial.
House without a basement, we started our testing on March 20th and ended on the date March. And the reading was 0.8 picocuries with the final average of 0.8 picocuries as well.
So when we tested in a house with a basement, we started on the same dates and ended on the same dates, and our reading was about, and then our final average was also 3.7 picocuries.
So this is just our data of the comparison of radon levels in West Central Montana. And in a house without a basement, 0.8 it's 0.8 picocuries, and then in a house with a basement is 3.7 picocuries, and our average is 6.9 picocuries in West Central Montana.
All right, and so our conclusion is that our hypothesis appears to be supported because in the house with a basement, we saw dramatically higher radon levels than in a house without a basement.
Okay, questions? We're going to talk about what we would do next time. We'll talk about that next. Okay, go.
Was your house with a basement, in the basement?
The house with a basement, it was done in the basement. Yeah.
You didn't have a back?
I think if you were to test in the house with a basement on the same, or on the first floor, I think you would still see the lower levels. In the house with a basement is where you see those high levels is in the basement, not necessarily in the first floor of the house.
Where were the two houses located?
So the first house, the house with a basement was located in Upper Miller Creek, and then the house without a basement was located in Florence area around Ravalli County.
Similar soil types or different?
Yeah, they were similar. They were similar soil types.
Where did you get the average amount? Because it just doesn't seem to match with your information.
graph, the average amount, do you mean the average amount in West Central Montana or our averages?
The average amount in West Central Montana.
Oh, okay, so that was from the Missoula, or not Missoula, it was from the, I don't know, Environmental Protection Agency for Montana, their website, and they do all this testing themselves too, and so that's where our average came from, is from their data. Oh, yeah?
Does geometry or soil type affect levels of radon?
That's something we could have done further if we had more time and more radon detectors, because we could have tested on like bedrock or different types of soils. So we are not really sure, but that's, with further testing, you could definitely determine that.
All right, hello? Okay, you can hear that, that's a little far away. So, my name is Caleb Horton.
I'm Frankie Needles.
Alicia Osved.
I'm Max Williams. And we are part of Hellgate High School's Miss Henthorne's Chem 2 class, and we did our air toxics project on the 3M filtrate and what effect it has, air ventilator, and what effect it has on dust particles in 3 different towns. Somebody else needs to hold that.
Okay, so our question was, to what extent does the air ventilator improve the air qualities in homes in 3 different towns? So we tested it in Lolo, Tura, and Missoula. Here's a map of the different addresses that we tested them at, and they were significantly far away, so we could get a good reading from each spot. So our hypothesis was that the Lolo home would have the most significant effect when using the air ventilator, because it's a newer home and it doesn't have a wood stove or anything that could affect the dust in the house.
For our procedure, we each took home the dust track and the air filter to our own individual houses and set up the dust track for 12 hours in a fairly, I don't know, like busy room. Like I set mine up in my living room. And we ran for 12 hours and collected the data there, and then turned it off and ran the air filter for 12 hours. And then while the air filter was still on, we again ran the dust track for 12 more hours and compared the graphs afterwards.
All right, so this is my house. I had Lolo. So this green line right here shows that with the time I stuck on the filtrate ventilator, and the red line is the EPA recommended unhealthy line. We called it the danger line, but it's not. So we did not put ours into micrograms per meter. We did milligrams per meter cubed, and that would be 0.035. And so my house, as you can see, I stuck it on at 7 o'clock at night for my first test, and then ran it 12 hours, and I stuck on the air ventilator through that green line. And you can tell that during the nighttime it spiked up, and I'm not sure why, because I keep my dog in the room and I only have one dog, so that could change the results. But then as soon as I turned on the air ventilator, my results went down, and they went down to 0. So I was graphing 0 particles in the air. Come down to Lolo, I have the best house there.
Oh yeah. All right, so clearly my graph is pretty interesting. There's a lot of activity, I guess, in my house. Again, that green line there is when it switched from no air ventilator to after the air ventilator had been running. And those spikes right there after the air ventilator had been running are probably just from cooking dinner like right after that. But as you can see, after those spikes, the levels were much lower, so I guess you could say that the air ventilator did help on average.
So this was my house in Tura, and at the very beginning, the air particles were way above the EPA recommended level, and that was probably right when I turned it on was when we were cooking breakfast in the kitchen. And then after I turned the air ventilator on, it was significantly lower. And then there's a couple spikes after the air ventilator was on, and that was also when we were cleaning our house with the vacuum cleaner. So that is why there's a spike near the end.
So for our conclusion, our hypothesis was supported in Lolo having the best air quality with the air ventilator, and Tura actually had the worst air quality with the air ventilator. So some improvements were to start all equipment at the same time of day and try to have like the same routine, and to break up the question into two different parts on whether it helps in a home and then in which town does it help the most in. And then we want to choose homes with the same environments, whether they have animals and how many animals, whether someone in that house smokes, whether they have a wood stove or a furnace, and whether it's a new or old home. Any questions?
Yes.
So, two parts to this question. Now, your questions were like, which town, each air quality was better in, right? Did you guys test multiple houses in that town, or just?
No, we just tested each, and it was actually, thinking back on it, we did a two-part experiment, and that was kind of, we could have just done air quality in each of the house. We didn't do air ventilator in each of the house. We mostly tested our own houses each in those 3 different towns. Jody?
Now, did you test, like, some during the day and then some others at night? Because particulate matter is usually lower at night, so would that be effective to your data?
Well, we said in the procedure that we would start the dust track for 12 hours, so it ran from like 7 in the morning to 7 at night, and then we turned off the dust track and turned on the air ventilator so that we could see if the air ventilator was working, then we turned back the dust track on. So we tested it in the night and in the morning, so it was continuous.
But to answer your question, yes, because I started mine at 7 at night, and she started hers at 7 in the morning. Yes?
So would the Lolo results then be different because there was no vacuuming and no meal making?
Yes. Factors that went into that is I have 1 dog, and they have multiple animals. They both have 2 dogs or other animals. Nobody in my house smokes, and when we did this, my house was 12 months, just built, brand new. So, and my dad is a health freak, but I don't know if that really affects anything. We didn't clean during that time. I had it going for around the 2 days that everybody else did. So, I mean, we cooked dinner. I have a job, so I'm never really home. It's mostly just my parents, and I set mine up in the kitchen in between the living room, where it's most traveled by everybody, including myself and my dog. So, those were just factors that I took into account for mine. Brandon.
Can you go back to your
Lolo slide.
So, is the EPA recommended value 0.035 or 0.0035? Because that says the line is at 0.0035.
It's 0.035.
So, does that mean that house was way below?
Yeah.
Or did you add a decimal?
It's way below.
It's way below.
That line should not be there.
If we were doing this right, not right, but if we actually shouldn't have this red line going through here because my house was so under the value of results, it was at 0 for some of them, that we wouldn't really need this because I was on a different scaling format for that. Any other questions? Yes?
Yeah. Yeah, I also forgot to mention that I do actually have like 3 pets, and my mom smokes, so I mean there's a lot of activity going along in my house, so that could explain a lot of fluctuation in the dust levels. That separates the data that I gathered before the air ventilator to after the air ventilator.
But your lowest values are actually before you turned it on?
Yeah. Couldn't. I don't know what happened with the ground. It was probably at night or something. I'm not exactly sure why the levels were so much lower there.
Okay, we're going to take about an 8-minute break. Let's start again at 11:20.
Hi, I'm Kaylin Frost, and this is Michaela Rude, Haley Jessup, and Shelby Jessup. We are from Corvallis High School, and Mr. Hamill is our teacher. Our project focuses on the amount of PM 2.5 that wearing a safety mask can prevent from entering your lungs.
The question was, will wearing a mask really reduce the amount of PM 2.5 inhaled? Next slide. The hypothesis was if an area has poor air quality, then will wearing a mask decrease the amount of particulate matter that could be inhaled?
So our procedure was we ran the dust track first in the shop one day for an hour without a mask, and then we rubber banded a mask on the impactor, and the next day we ran it basically the same time in a barn without a mask for an hour, and then we rubber banded the same mask on the impactor again for another hour. And then there's no one in the,
Okay, the constants were, when we were testing them like in the barn and in the shop, nobody was in there. We just went in there, put the dust track in there, started it, and let it run for an hour. Each area was tested at the same time of the day, and it was tested for a total of 2 hours, one with the mask, one without the mask.
Okay, so the dark blue line is the barn without the mask. The light blue line is the barn with the mask. And the red line is the shop without a mask. And the pink line is the shop with the mask. And as you can see, the light colored lines are below the dark colored lines. And the masks actually helped quite a bit. They helped in the shop, they helped 93%, they helped stop 93% of the particulate matter, and 60% was stopped in the barn.
The results showed that in both areas, the amount of PM 2.5 is lower with the mask than without the mask, and this shows that our hypothesis was correct. As Caitlin said, 60% of the PM 2.5 was stopped in the barn and 93% in the shop. So it does help to wear a mask, but when you're working in a dusty environment, you should wear it because it will like protect your lungs, not like a super significant amount where like you're gonna die from inhaling so much like dust, but it will help it a lot. There wasn't as much dust in the barn as there was the shop, but more was stopped, even though there wasn't as much. But when working, you should always wear it. PM 2.5 molecules cannot be filtered out of your body because they're just so small.
So improvements we can do to our test, we can have like the people that own the barn and the shop working in the barn and the shop, and then we can have longer tests for each place with and without the mask on the dust track. Any questions? Yeah.
So when you tested each location with the mask and without the mask, it was different days?
Yeah, but they were like right after each other at the same time. And both the days, like neither of them were rainy or windy. They were basically around the same weather and stuff. There was no inversion.
What do you think the difference would be in the fit between the dust trap versus on someone's face?
Well, if you're on your face, it probably fits better, so it will filter more than being like rubber banded. But we did rubber band it on the impactor.
Put some hair on the impactor.
What kind of a mask did you use? 'Cause I know that like the organization I work for has tested a lot of masks, and most of them don't filter out PM 2.5 for humans, and there's only a couple that are recommended that are really easy. So I was surprised at your results.
We actually have a picture of, it's just like one of those doctor masks, surgical masks. It's the middle picture we just used to.
They're actually from the dental place. That's where we got them.
What kind of shop did you guys test it, and where was that?
That was your shop.
Oh. It was just it It was where my uncle did some woodworking things. He owns a construction company, so there was some wood dust in there, mainly.
Could you go to your hypothesis page? Oh, okay. That's correct. I must have read it very quickly. I wasn't sure if you were making an observation-based project or a thesis, a hypothesis-based project. So you did have a full hypothesis.
Do you know how big the size of the wood particles are? Because maybe the PM 2.5, maybe you should have used a PM10 recorder instead, because that would have done a better reading on those wood particles instead.
All we had was the 2.5 reader. We didn't have the PM10. Like,
do you know how big those particles are?
we don't. Yes, Bethany?
No offense, but it's hard to see the graph well. There's some of you in front of it. Could you go back to the graph and, yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cami Ford.
I'm Christy Bixler.
And I'm Ethan Daniels, and we did our project on particulate air pollution effects on precipitation and in urban and rural areas. And we're in Mr. Taylor's Chemistry 2 class. Our question is there a difference in particulate air quality as measured by snowfall in urban and rural areas? Here's some background information. We have our average precipitation and average snowfall in Missoula. And also, snow is different from rain because it is much more likely to contain particulate pollution because it stays in the air much longer before it falls to the ground. And also, when it falls to the ground, it stays there and rain runs off somewhere. So when snowplows pile it up into big piles, the pollution is at a high concentration, and when the snow melts, it's all released at the same time. Some more of that.
So our hypothesis was that snow samples collected in urban areas would have more particulate than snow samples collected in rural areas, just because like in town there are things like cars and like industry and wood smoke, and all that stuff creates particulates that are released into the air. Okay, and our method was that we collected 2 liters of snow in open areas at Sentinel High School, and then 5 miles west of Missoula, and then 10 miles west of Missoula, and we let the snow melt. And we used a hemocytometer and a microscope to count the number of particulates in each sample. For each sample, there were about 4 trials and 3 counts for each trial, and so that's 12 counts for each location. And then we performed 3 2-sample t-tests on each data point to see if there was a statistical difference. Okay, and then this is kind of what it would look like if you were looking at it through the microscope. And so you can see where the red circles are. That's what the particulates look like. And so that's how we counted the amount of particulates in each sample. And then these are just some graphs of the data that we found. So as you can actually see, there were more particulates 10 miles out than there were in the Sentinel parking lot, which is kind of interesting.
So those are just our data points for each of the counts of the particulates for each of our trials in each location. So we did 3 2-sample t-tests to determine if there was a statistical difference between the mean number of particulates at each location. And we determined that there was not a statistical difference between Missoula and 5 miles away, or 5 miles away and 10 miles away. But there was a difference between Missoula and 10 miles away from Missoula. So our conclusion is that our data did not support our hypothesis because it was obvious that there was more particulates collected from farther away. The most likely cause of this is that our weather comes from the west, and so it goes it goes towards us from the west, and so it drops its particulates as it's coming towards us. Yeah. So there are possible sources of error were that we counted the particulates incorrectly and that we didn't have enough data points because we only went to the west. And also we could have had particulates from the collecting bins, but it's not likely because we cleaned the bins pretty thoroughly. That's just like, we calculated on the calculator, and because there's a normal curve, and when it's on the left side of the mean standard deviation, it's a negative value.
How accurate is just counting the particulates that you see through a microscope on the snow that you collected?
So that's why we said that it was a possible source of error, because we each counted the sample for ourselves, and then we took an average of that. So it is possible that we could have counted incorrectly, but it's not too likely because sometimes like the particulates are pretty easy to see. So so of course we could have counted incorrectly, but since we each counted it and then took an average of that, it should be a pretty even number.
How many wood-burning stoves at homes do you think might have been in your area that's 10 miles away? Were there homes near that used wood as their food source?
There weren't very many because we went out on Mullen Road, and so we had a pretty open area, so there probably weren't that many wood-burning stoves in the area, which is why it's more likely that it would be a possible source of contamination in town. So that's.
Were you consistent with the type of samples that you collected? Did you just collect like untouched snow in the areas?
Yeah. Yes. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Were the collection sites near the roadside, so plowing might have been an issue? Or can you tell me a little bit more about why you think 10 miles out would be higher concentration?
So we did go off to the side of the road, but so there were these huge just open fields, and we would go out to the middle of the field, so it's not, and there was a pretty clean like sheet of snow, and so it wasn't likely that any particles from people driving on the side of the road got into the snow. And what we think was the most likely source of the particulates was just from weather coming from the west, and so it drops. The clouds drop their particulates on the way coming over here. So.
Hello everyone, I'm Tyson Lewis, and these are my group members Jessica, Sarah, and Edward. And the name of our presentation is Scientifically Proven. We're from Corvallis High School, by the way, and the question we're asking is, how bad of an impact on air quality is waxing skis? And Jessica will now present the purpose.
So what we wanted to do with our presentation was really relate to something that most of us do, and that's skiing. I'm a ski patroller, Sarah works at a ski shop, both of the boys are boarders. So we wanted to do a presentation that actually related to our valley and Missoula and wherever we're going to go because it's our hobby. Our hypothesis was that if we use ski wax in an enclosed environment, then the quality of air would be significantly above 35 micrometers squared. Micrograms, yeah, excuse me.
All right, so I performed the procedure of this experiment. I work at a shop, so when I first came in, I set up the dust tracker about 2 feet away from my station. I recorded 45 minutes of just constant air before any waxing took place. After that, I proceeded to wax 20 individual skis over a 6-hour time period. I used Swix wax, temperature -2 degrees Celsius to -8 degrees Celsius, and my iron temp remained at a level 8, which is about 115 degrees Celsius. So this is our graph. The red line shows the EPA standard, which is 35 micrograms per meter cubed. The downward arrows coming from above are the exact times that I waxed the skis, and you can see that the spikes in the particulate matter and the times I waxed correspond with each other, which supports our hypothesis, and Edward will tell you our conclusion.
All right. So from our conclusion that we extracted from our research in the graph was that after about 5 pairs of skis, the particulate matter spiked and continued to increase as the remainder of the experiment proceeded. And that anyone waxing skis in an enclosed environment for a significant amount of time is putting their health at risk. We also realized that our experiment is not obviously perfect, and things that we could improve on is testing multiple days, testing multiple shops or homes, environments where we could wax the skis, and longer testing periods and a longer control period. And to wrap things up, we'd like to thank you for your attention, and if there's any questions, we're open.
Was the wax you were using scented? Because I know they make scented wax.
Well, a big part of our project was just doing what we do every day. And since I work in a shop, it was the standard wax we use, and I don't believe it was scented.
Well, did you think of testing the difference between a hot wax and a rub?
Well, I know that I think the main part of our project was just, I think we all use hot wax.
Yeah, we all use hot wax, and what we really aim to do in this project is to relate. And I myself, I don't go out and buy waxes. I do it myself. Sarah does it herself. So what we really wanted to see was how does that affect our health, and how does that affect our everyday life, because it's our hobby, it's what we do.
And I'm sure the comparison with the hot wax and the rub-on wax was that the hot wax would obviously have more particulate matter because it's heated up and it creates fumes. Anything else? Yes?
Where was the dust track located? On the ground?
It was about at, it was here. So about shoulder level, sorry. It was just on a table that was by my station. Yes?
Did you notice any difference in readings during the melting process versus the scraping process?
I didn't actually scrape the skis. All of this was done in the initial waxing. So I didn't do any of the scraping because I just wanted to know what the fumes that came off of the iron from the waxing, what that produced. Yeah.
Do you guys normally wax for like 6 hours straight, or?
Well, I work at a ski shop, so we get a lot of skis from other places. So like traditionally, I can spend a whole day waxing skis, but I'm sure that's not how everyone is. If they do it at home.
Do you do that day in and day out, though? Like every day you wax for that long?
I don't myself, but I have other employees that work at the shop, so.
Yeah, a lot of our information showed, though, that as soon as you melted the wax, the air quality spiked. So it wasn't just all day, it was as soon as you melted the wax on. Go back to the
And to support that, I'll show you our graph again. So these were, it takes me like 4 minutes to put wax on a ski. So all of these spikes are while I'm waxing an individual ski. And that's where the arrows are shown too. So it shows that no matter if you wax, I guess it did spike a lot, but most of them are in the same range from waxing one ski to waxing the 5th pair of ski.
But for most people, it wouldn't be that hazardous.
No, but it is well above the EPA standard, so it could be hazardous, but I'm sure over more time it becomes more hazardous.
Yeah, so this red line right here is the 24 EPA standard, and as you can see, through the entire experiment except for the control. It is,
Well,
on that one point right down there, towards the beginning of the experiment, it's all above the 35 micrograms per cube pH standard.
yes. Have you shared this information with your ski shop?
With my ski shop, yeah, we're done with the ski season right now, but I'll definitely bring it up next season. I've shared it with them, but since it was through my school, like the ski shop didn't ask me to do it. They'll definitely be aware of it, but I can't guarantee of any change.
You still gotta wax your skis.
Yeah, you still gotta wax your skis.
All right, anyone?
Go ahead.
Was anyone else waxing in the shop at this time, or was it just?
It was just me the whole time.
So if you were doing it at your home with multiple skis, do you think there would be an effect on?
I'm sure there would be more particulate matter in the air, so it would probably increase, because I was just doing one ski at a time.
It would just be an increase, more of an increase after one period of time, the multiple spikes.
Yeah.
Would there be any way of reducing some of this particulate matter in the air, like would turning on a fan?
Yeah, I'm sure turning on a fan, lowering the temperature of the iron, bigger space. There's many.
Yeah, those are all things that we could have been, capable of doing if we had more time.
Tested multiple places, multiple shops, homes. Filtration, yeah.
How is the ventilation system in the ski shop?
It's not great. We have a fan that we can turn on, but it's a pretty enclosed space. Like, we don't have any windows. Just fan. So that probably adds a lot to it as well.
Any more questions? All right.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, hello. I'm Taylor Pfister.
I'm Charlotta Langner.
I'm Molly Miller. Our project, we tested the effects of weather on particulate matter within the Missoula Valley.
Okay, so our question was, how does weather affect particulate matter in the Missoula Valley? Our hypothesis was, if weather has an effect on particulate matter, then warmer conditions will produce more particulate matter than colder temperatures. Similarly, the presence of wind will increase the amount of particulate matter present. Increased precipitation, however, will cause the particulate matter to decrease. And here are just a few graphs that show our expectations for the data. Our variables, our independent variable was the weather conditions, such as temperature, precipitation, snowfall, and wind speed. Our dependent was the PM 2.5 levels. We controlled the location of the test and the time intervals. And other variables that may have contributed to our project was the season and the car emissions and such things as wood burning stoves.
So for the procedure, we set up the dust track here in the university in the Clapp building. It's on the 3rd floor, so it's pretty high off the ground of where most people are walking and breathing. So we took continuous tests for approximately a week at a time and tested 6 weeks total throughout the winter and spring, and we monitored the weather conditions so we could compare them. Here's pictures of the setup in the lab. The dust track was inside, and there's a tube going out the window. So for the results,
I'm just going to talk about the graph really quick because they're kind of hard to read. We have two y-axis or axes. On the left side, it is the PM 2.5 levels, and then the right side is the weather readings. And all of the PM 2.5 is the averages per day because we were taking them at 10-minute intervals, and so we averaged all of those per day.
So the areas where there's a lot of spikes, that's the part we tested, and we were unable to put a break in the graph. So the straight lines, please ignore those. So as you can see, the blue line is the PM 2.5, and it seems to correlate pretty well with the temperature inversely. So as the temperature increases, the PM 2.5 went down. For the precipitation, there is some correlation at the beginning. You can see that when the precipitation was really low, the PM 2.5 went up quite a bit, and when the precipitation goes up, the PM 2.5 goes down.
For the snowfall, which we counted under precipitation in our hypothesis, you can see that when the snowfall increases, which the snowfall is in red, and you can see when the snowfall increases, the PM 2.5 decreases, and for the wind speed, you can actually see around February 10th, which is about the middle after the long period of time where we weren't testing, you can actually see an inverse relationship between the two. And as the wind speed increases or decreases, the PM 2.5 increases.
So in conclusion, when the temperature went up, particulate matter went down, and that was going against our hypothesis. In accordance to our hypothesis, with more precipitation and snowfall, particulate matter decreased. And refuting our hypothesis about wind, with an increase of wind, the particulate levels decreased. Our graphs, however, didn't show direct correlation, so we assumed that there was also other factors going into the PM 2.5 levels. Some potential improvements. Keeping track of inversions probably would have been a good idea. Where we got the information for the weather, they didn't keep track of if there was inversions or not. And then just analyzing other seasonal factors that may play in with both human impacts and environmental. So in the spring with like pollen, and in the winter with like wood burning stoves and car emissions, and so on and so forth. And one of the other things was to become more proficient in Excel, because we had a hard time with some of the graphs with all the points that we had. So, questions?
Can you tell me how you think temperature and wind speed might be related to some of your results?
So in the winter, when the temperature is lower, it's colder, and more people would be heating their houses potentially with wood stoves. And if the temperature went up even a little bit in the winter, people would not heat their houses as much, and there would be less PM 2.5 released. And so as the temperature increased, the PM 2.5 would go down in the winter. We didn't consider that in before the experiment, but afterwards the results seemed to point to something like that.
Just a comment as far as that, you mentioned inversions, which of course has a huge impact on state and air and so forth, but you can actually look at the National Weather Service, you get a rough idea, and you'll find there's weather stations like the top 0.6, the Valley on the Valley floor. Look at those temperatures, and there's a couple close by, I think down there in the valley, that are a little bit 0.6 in the valley floor. And that really gives you a good snapshot if there is an inversion or not.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the other improvements that we were thinking we should have done is tested the weather at where we were testing, like had the dust track, taking our own readings for that, because, you know, if there was wind and there's a building blocking it or so on and so forth, and taking more readings throughout the day to match how many readings we took for our PM 2.5 levels.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Emily Ingstrom.
My name is Jordan Tyson.
My name is Jody Lee Hostetler. We're from Hellgate High School. We're in Miss Henthorne's Chemistry 2 class in Missoula, Montana, and we did the effects of different cooking methods on particulate matter.
So our question was, as we said, how do cooking methods affect the level of particulate matter and the air quality? And our hypothesis was that we thought water-based cooking methods would affect the air quality more because of the water vapor released into the air. Materials, we had our dust track, and we decided to use potatoes for all of our cooking methods because they're the most versatile, and you can boil them, bake them, and so on. We had our basic kitchen utensils to do our cooking methods and stuff. And our variables are independent variable, where the methods of cooking and dependent on that, whereas the particulate matter in the air.
And we made sure to keep the potatoes controlled in all of our tests, like made sure they were the same size and weight and stuff, just so that there wasn't any things that could affect that. For procedure, we got our potatoes ready and we cut them up about a ½ inch thick for each experiment to try to keep that controlled. Prepared the stove or frying pan or whatever, depending on the cooking method that we were using at the time. And we set up the dust track 10 minutes before to get like a control level on the graph, and then started cooking for about 25 minutes. And then after that, left a 10-minute period for cool down. And the total data collection ended up at 45 minutes. And for baking, we left the skin on for that and left it uncut just because that's more realistic.
Okay, I'll be talking about the graph. So I want to first point out that the red line is the EPA recommended 35 micrograms per meter cube. And so our first line we'll be looking at is the frying. And at first, this is about to the 10 minutes. And this is one thing we could improve on. It wasn't a steady straight line just because we tested at Jordan's house and he has an the living room opens to the kitchen, so it's not completely closed off. So after the 10 minutes, at first, boiling was the highest, but overall we can see that towards the end, the particulate matter from the frying is what actually lingered, especially during the cooking, it started to rise. And then in our second trial, so each trial consisted of 3 individual tests of the frying, boiling, and baking. So again, here's the recommended EPA line, and we accidentally burnt our second trial of the frying, which we were actually talking about would be an interesting variable to look at. So I just want to point out this scale is different, but it goes in increments of 10. So right here's about 10. So the boiling and the baking are at about 10, which is about the same here. So we can see that what happened in the end was the frying, especially when burnt, ended up being the highest. And here are just some pictures where we burnt our potatoes. And these are just different methods the different methods we did.
Okay. So our hypothesis was that cooking with water-based systems would have a higher PM 2.5. But however, we concluded that this was not in fact true, and our data refuted our hypothesis. Rather, water vapor does actually very little to affect the particulate matter in the air, and that such methods such as frying were more effective. Of course, our experiment wasn't exactly perfect, although we tried to keep most variables constant, like the potatoes and the preparation. But we did have some, we would like to improve in some areas. For example, having a controlled environment. There were a lot of people walking in and out, so we would like to minimize that as much as possible. Also, we would like to take similar testing times, because sometimes some tests were at night, some were in the morning, so we'd like to just keep it all similar. Also, to have consistent sizes of potato quarters in width. Some were varying in sizes, so to keep that similar and everything would be better for our lab. Thank you.
Did you ever think about maybe cooking different foods or using different foods for the project?
Yes, actually, in the beginning we were thinking of like baking cookies and all that stuff that we could actually eat. But then we thought the potatoes would just be better for the lab results to keep it at a baseline. So.
The different temperatures of your different cooking methods?
Okay, so I'm just gonna go back to the graphs really quickly. So we didn't really measure that as much as we were looking. Well, in our experiment, we didn't really look towards temperature. We were looking just more towards the different methods, because as Jordan said about our control with the potato, we wanted to kind of keep it more realistic, but that is kind of one of our lab errors, is the frying right here was probably about a 4 or 5 on the stove. And then on this one, I accidentally put it up to a 6. and so it ended up burning them. So I think temperature really played a part that if we did this again, we would definitely look towards more exact temperatures. Taylor?
Did you wait a specific amount of time between the different cooking methods, or was it pretty random?
Yes, we did trials throughout the entire year, and we never did multiple trials on the same day, so they were all at completely different days.
So we ended up doing about 8. There were 2 that we did leave out just because of had really large errors. Like the second time we did baking, we didn't check the oven, and Jordan's parents had kale chips in there. So when we were preheating it, the chips started to cook again. So we left those sort of tests out just because we knew that it would skew our data too much. But we did about 8 different individual tests.
And why are your graphs, the measurements for the graphs, why are those different?
So the reason our scaling is incremented differently because of how high this goes up here. We couldn't, if we did this to 150, it would just be a lot harder to read. So we had to keep it like how it is right now. Any more questions?
What was so steady about the potatoes that you couldn't have used up? For example, eggs.
Mainly, we just wanted to choose potatoes because they were easy to get a hold of, first of all, and you can bake potatoes, fry potatoes, and boil potatoes pretty easily. So we could have chosen other foods, but on hand, that was just the easiest to go with.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so for our experiment, we decided to test how the school buses affect the air quality at our school. We're from Corvallis. I'm Olivia. That's Luke, and then we have Bree. So our question is, how bad does the air get when the buses run? And our hypothesis is the exhaust-filled air will not raise the levels of PM 2.5 enough to distinguish an average of above 35 micrograms. So for background info, Bree's going to tell you about what is in the exhaust and how it is bad for humans.
So every day the buses run for an average of 10 to 15 minutes. And the bus emissions contain benzene, formaldehyde, acetaldehyde, and 1,3-butadiene, as well as carbon monoxides, nitrogen oxides, and sulfur oxides. These chemicals have been linked to health effects such as lung cancer, cardiovascular disease, asthma attacks, chronic bronchitis, decreased lung function, allergies, impaired immune system function, and shortness of breath.
So this is basically just a few photos of the area that we tested. The buses come in through the top up here, and then one by one they line up staggered along this path right here. So the buses are all in a row, and so yeah, you can see how they're in a line right here, but there would really be like 10 buses. Olivia will explain our experiment.
Okay, so for the actual experiment, we started off with the control, and the buses come to line up around 3:15 to 3:25. And so to get a good control of the air, right before the buses came, we tested from about 3 to 3:10. And so we turned on the dust track machine and just let it run for 10 minutes because that's a similar time period to how long the buses will be there. And you'll see that control next in our graph. And as you can see, the buses get very clustered when they're all together lined up. And so as the exhaust is coming out, it definitely pools up together because they're so compact. And next for our graphs.
Okay, this is our first graph, our first test, and in this first one, we only ran it for 5 minutes, so 5 minutes before and then 5 minutes when the buses were there. So first of all, the orange line right here is the 35 24-hour EPA 24-hour standard, and the green line is the blue line's our first trial, and the green line's our second trial. And this pinkish colored line right here is the control for our first trial, and the purple line is the control for our second trial. So the controls stayed right around that 35 line, and as you can see, the first and second trial had heavy, really high spikes going over up here to over 600, which is well above the 35. So this was our first two trials. And then the second graph shows our last two trials, which went for the full 10 minutes. So the controls went 10 minutes when the buses weren't there, and then we started the next two when the buses were there. And these were on different days, but the control for the number 3 and the bus trial for 3, those were all on the same days. So once again, the orange line is the 35, and the green line is our fourth trial, and the blue line is our third trial, with the controls being the purple and the pinkish ones again below EPA 24-hour standard. And you can see we had multiple spikes in these two tests that didn't go as high as the 600, but that's over 300, so that's still well above the 35 micrograms.
So I went on to the Montana air quality for forest fires to compare it to the bus exhausts, and the standard EPA 24-hour is the 35, which is the short graph, and then the fire one is next, which is at 355, and then you can see the different bus trials, bus trial 1, bus trial 2, bus trial 3, bus trial 4, and they're not all above 355, but there's one that's 625, which is definitely worse than forest fires, and we know that forest fires are bad for us. It's not good for us to be out in the air, so we shouldn't really be breathing in the exhaust from the buses either.
Okay, so our conclusion is contrary to our belief. The levels of PM 2.5 by the bus exhaust were well above the 35 micrograms, or 0.035 milligrams, which is the safe level. One thing I want to point out first is that level is the 24-hour standard, and so that's unhealthy to breathe that much for like 24 hours straight. In our test, the buses were only there for like 10 minutes, so while they're well above the 35, it's still unhealthy, but it wasn't. We weren't over 24 hours, so it wasn't incredibly unhealthy. Yeah, contrary to our conclusion, the bus exhausts were well higher than what we originally expected them to be. And then some ways we could improve this, we could have done more tests. We had 4 tests that we had an error on the dust track, so we had to kick those out. So we had more tests, but for some reason there was an error. We wanted to test different schools at Hamilton. Hamilton, the buses are a little different. They're not staggered. They come in a line and then they leave. They don't all leave at the same time. So we wanted to see if that was a better way of arranging the buses, but we didn't have enough time to test that out. And we could have done a longer test running time, and instead of having the control and the buses being separate tests, we could have done it like for 20 minutes so you could see like when the buses arrived and how it spiked. So those were possible improvements that we could have done. Are there any questions?
When you line up buses, did you guys put the dust track over in the middle of them?
Well, for our control group, we first walked up and down the little driveway, so we could get a good control of where the buses lined up. And then when the buses did line up, there's a little strip in between where the buses are, and we walked up and down that as the test was. So it's not like we were standing right behind the exhaust or something like that. It was. Any others? Yes.
You did 8 tests then altogether?
Yes. 4 controls and then 4 with the exhaust.
And over how many days?
These were all on different days. They weren't like spread out. Yeah, each test was on a different day. Yes?
Bus number 2 had twice the emissions as other buses. Do you know why?
Many things could have skewed that. It could have been weather. We didn't specifically look at the weather. It could have been anything really. Do you know?
Another thing could have been wind. With the high wind, it could have blown the fumes and exhaust from the bus way quicker, and that day could have been not as much weather or not as much wind, and so it could have just kind of sat in that area. We didn't really look at that though, but that's another improvement that we could have worked on. Any other questions? Edward?
I just have like one question. Since we are in the same town, I know that traffic gets built up right along the school, right around the same time as when the buses are picking up kids. You guys take that into account as like the emission?
I mean, that also, the built-up traffic would also have an effect, but the controls and the bus tests are like 10 minutes apart from each other, so the traffic would be relatively the same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Kate Michelle.
I'm Lauren Byrne, and we're from Hellgate High School, Miss Hinthorn's Chemistry 2 class, and we are comparing particulate levels with 2 homes. One had a wood stove and one had a furnace for the main source of heat. So our question was, is there an association between the particulate matter level of a house with a wood stove as the main source of heat and a house with a furnace as the main source of heat?
Our hypothesis was that if a house with a wood stove as the main source of heat would have a higher level of particulate matter than a house with a furnace as the main source of heat. This would be ultimately indicative of higher levels of particulate matter as a result of wood being burned rather than furnace as the main source.
So our procedure, we did it over a 24-hour period, and the 2 houses were in 2 different areas of town. My house was one of the testing spots, and it was up the Rattlesnake, and then the other house was out in Sealy, and that was the wood stove house. And it turned out that it was the same floor plan kind of kitchen area. So the dust track was located in similar areas of the floor plan, and then we ran it for a 24-hour period from midnight to midnight to collect our data.
Okay, so our variables. Our independent variable was the main source of heat that we had. We had both the furnace and the wood-burning stove. And then our measurements were from the dependent variable, which was the particulate matter levels that we measured in both of the houses. And then the variables that we kept controlled were the amount of time we tested, as well as the placement of the dust tract, where Lauren was talking about, and the weather and the time of year in which we tested.
All right, so for our first graph, this shows the particulate matter of the house with the furnace as the main source of heat. And as you can see, it's completely steady. And we actually tested in November, and so it was the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So the spike is when Thanksgiving dinner was kind of being somewhat prepared, which obviously threw it off a little bit. But there was also cooking being done in the home with the wood stove, so it was kind of a consistent. And then this is the graph for the particulate matter with the wood stove as the main source of heat. And as you can see, it's pretty steady, and then there's 2 spikes. Clearly the 2 spikes represent when the wood stove was opened and wood was put in to keep the heat going. The second spike also shows that dinner was being made around that time, so as you can see, it comes up a little higher than the first spike.
Also, we do not have the EPA recommended level on our graphs because it was so much higher than the data that we had collected.
So then this is our data analysis. It shows the maximum of both the houses, the minimum and the average. The red represents the house with the furnace, and the yellow represents the house with the wood stove. And as you can see, the house with the furnace had a higher maximum and a lower minimum because of the such drastic range, which also meant that it had a higher average as opposed to the home with the wood stove.
So for the house that used the furnace as the main source of heat, like you just saw in that graph, it had a much higher maximum level, which created that higher average level of particulate matter. The house using the wood stove, as opposed to the furnace, had a lower maximum, which created a lower average. So then, as I said earlier, every measurement that we gathered was below the 35 micrograms per meter squared, or cubed. And then our conclusion, the house with the furnace as the main source of heat had more consistent levels of particulate matter, with the peak around when the cooking occurred. And then the house with the wood stove also had similar type of peaks, much lower from when the wood stove was loaded with wood. And our hypothesis was not supported by our experiment due to the fact that we saw much higher levels of particulate matter in the house with the furnace as opposed to the wood stove.
So improvements that we would make for further experiments, we would collect data in different kinds of seasons. We did collect in November, so of course in Montana the weather in November is very winter-like, but it would have been interesting to see when we had all the snow how it would have affected it, because she would have used more wood in her wood stove to heat the house. Also, we thought about placing the dust tract in different areas around the house, because we did place it into the kitchen that was such an open concept. There was a lot of traffic and other things such as cooking that affected our particulate matter.
I personally thought a wood stove and a furnace was the same thing, so is there a way you can describe what a furnace is to me?
A furnace is just like having like a thermostat in your house, and the wood stove is where you actually manually stoke like a fire that actually heats your house.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So we thought, okay, so the wood stove, it's like having an enclosed fire that heats up your whole entire house, and you have to manually open the door and reinsert wood to get the fire to continually go, to then have continually having heat in your house. So we thought, because opening and closing the door to the fire would then add more particulate matter to the air in your house. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So was the wood stove that you guys were using, was it like an open fireplace, or was it actually like a wood stove, like you shut the door to?
You open the door, close the door, put the wood in. Yeah, it was closed.
It wasn't the open fire.
No, it wasn't open.
There was a big spike for Thanksgiving dinner in the furnace house. Was there a similar big spike in the wood stove house?
Well, it's kind of hard to see, but this spike the second one is taller than the first spike, and she entered the wood in these two, when these two areas spiked. So she said that she was making dinner during the second spike as well as entering the wood for the second time, so that's what makes it higher, but obviously the furnace had a higher spike with Thanksgiving dinner than the wood stove did.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Robbie Leibenguth. This is Lizzie Chorney, Kagan Kamaha, and Rachel Fisher. And we did ours on how do coal trains affect air quality. And we go to Sentinel High School, Mr. Taylor's Chem 2 class. So ours was, what is the difference in PM 2.5 levels with the particulate levels with coal trains and freight train differences. And this is important because Montana has one of the biggest coal surpluses in this side of the nation, and it's a huge export and import. So some of the background is coal dust can be released through the air through transport when as the trains are moving, the wind blows over the top and it releases the particles, and that can rise the PM 2.5 levels. And then again, the high concentrations of the coal dust can cause diseases such as lung cancer, which is a main one. And then there's very little government regulation on transporting coal, which we'll talk to you about later.
Okay, on the left side, you can see a coal train. Obviously, it's very open. It carries up to 100 tons of coal. There's no top, so it's very exposed. And on the right side, you see a freight train. They only carry up to 70 tons, and it's completely concealed, all the contents. So obviously it's a very big controversy in Missoula right now due to the fact that the main Montana Railway is located here. So there's a lot of controversy going on in between locals and the railways. And this picture shows what they call the Day of Action on April 26th, where petitioners assembled and blocked the railway for coal trains to go by. And the government's role is, our federal government is looking for economic type of things. They want the money, and it's the cheapest way to go through here for Asia to export. And so Montana, we're looking for the environmental perspective of it. We don't want pollutants and all that around our cities and states. And so legislators are trying to go to court with the railway companies to see if it meets state standards for pollution.
So our hypothesis is that coal trains do raise PM 2.5 levels. So our method, we use dust track 2. We collect data for 1 to 2 hours, and depending on the weather or depending on when the train was going through. Oh, go back. So the data we collected, we did our control, which is a parking lot right over by Greeno Park. Then we did a coal train standing in the train yard. Then we did a freight train, and then we tried to get a moving coal train, but I just kind of want to point out it was really hard to collect data because you can't just set the dust track down for an experiment like this. You have to, get the times the trains are going through town, and it was raining. Like every time we went to get data for the coal train, it was raining or windy. So we just left that out and used the first 3 for our data. So here's our analysis. Here's our graph. So right here. This would be right here. This would be the EPA standard, the .035. So you see at the bottom is our control, pretty normal, like everyday air. You're walking through the park. Then we got the freight train right here, a little spike right there when the diesel locomotive passed the dust track. A little spike right at the average though. Then you see the coal train just standing there, not even moving, and you see how high the levels get. You get a peak here. So it just kind of shows, even without the dust, without the train moving and dust moving all the particles, how high the actual PM 2.5 levels are.
We performed two sample t-tests on our data. The coal train versus our control, our p-value was 4.637 times 10 to the negative 4, which is way less than 0.05. Our coal train versus our freight train, our p-value was 0.0189, again less than 0.05, and we did the freight train versus control just to have something to compare it to, and it was 0.00915, still less than 0.05. So since all of these are less than 0.05, we can conclude that all trains put off a significant amount of pollution, not just the coal trains. And based on the data collected through the aerosol monitor, we collected 3 different data samples. These samples control, moving freight train, and a sitting coal train resulted in high air pollution. The highest pollution was put off by the sitting coal train. Therefore, this data shows our hypothesis was true. Coal trains do raise PM 2.5 levels, affecting the pollution in the surrounding area of the coal train.
Who said that? I don't know. That was Jess.
Any questions?
Do you have any idea what the source of the seems to be? The diesel engines, the coal, the friction of the wheels and tracks?
They're like power of the horsepower they have in the diesel trains are a lot bigger also, and the fact that they're open tops compared to all the freight trains, I think that has to do with it, and the amount of tons they carry. So I don't know if that answered it exactly.
The coal in the carts, it's so fine and ground up. It's coming straight from the mines. It's not covered or anything. So when they're coming through on those carts, the dust is blowing that coal dust. The wind is blowing that coal dust around everywhere, and that's getting into the air. That's how it's being released. I mean, you can see with the freight train, that's with the diesel, and like you said, the friction of the wheels. That's still staying below the EPA standards, or right at, with the diesel, that's right at the EPA standards. Then you see the coal train, just it's standing there, just normal wind with no top on it. It's way much higher than it should be.
So if the coal is blowing out of the trains, why do they leave them open? You think they'd lose money? They put a cover on it for $20 a carton.
That's why the state government and all the federal government's getting involved is, it's a problem you got to solve, and that's why this is such a big controversy at the moment.
One of the reasons that's such a big deal is because that is a topic that has brought up in all these conventions and everything that they have on them. People are like, we need to cover these, we need to have tops on them, but it's still something that isn't being done because there aren't regulations set on it.
But why is it a controversy? Why doesn't the company that owns the coal and ships the coal say, like, you're right, we're losing all this coal, we're losing thousands of pounds of coal blowing in the air, we can make money off this. Why don't they just put tops on it and be obvious?
A part of it is like just the whole economic issue. Just they want to save money. All they want to do is get money, and that's what kind of the federal government's about, the economy. And then also there's the whole fact that they can hold more tons without the tops on.
I mean, they're going to make more money just shipping with what they have, losing, I mean, the dust that comes out of the cart is so fine getting in the air. It's almost nothing to those companies than having to buy, thousands and thousands of new carts with tops on them with metal that costs, a lot more than coal does. So they're looking to maximize profit, not, they don't care about standards or anything. It's like losing a little bit of coal to them is nothing compared to spending all the money on new train carts.
So is the coal dust, is it small enough to be picked up by the monitor, the dust tracker?
Yes. I mean, you could see you could see in our data how high, we're 20 feet away from a coal train, and it's twice as much as what a regular train would be.
And do you think that's all produced by the coal dust? Or do you think there's like packaging to it?
No, we believe it's just due to the coal dust.
And we did other trains going by, like the freight trains and everything, and they didn't have anything due to other factors.
And what got you interested in that topic in the first place?
I think just because right now that's a big issue on pollution right in this area, so it means something to everyone, the local citizens and everything, so it's a very interesting topic to take up.
And right when we started the project, there was a petition that was getting ready to go on out there, which was one of the ones that we had pictures of. And there was a day where a bunch of people went out and sat on the tracks because there were, I don't know, I think there was like 5 coal trains coming through that day or something. And so everybody was afraid for their health that it was going to be an issue.
There was actually one day we were scheduled to go out and take a test on a coal train, and they ended up not sending them out because they heard of a protest going on. So they ended up not even sending the trains through because of the protest.
I'm sorry, I did say this in the presentation, I might have missed it. How many samples total did you collect for each type? I missed that.
We collected each of those we collected one sample, and we went about 2 or 3 times to get a coal train actually moving along the tracks. But each time we went, when we had time to go, it was raining or windy, and the data, if we put it in, it just...
And then we had to share all the dust tracks in between the classes, so we had set times, yeah.
I mean, you got, it was a very, difficult thing to test, because you couldn't just go and set it down and leave it there for a day and come back. You had to find out when the trains were going through, you had to find out when we all had time. We didn't have school or sports to be able to go there and get the samples. So, it wasn't as easy a thing to test, so we tried to get as much as possible in the time frame we had.
Johnny did a study, they tested coal trains, I think, for PM, and I was wondering if you'd seen their methods or taken a look at that study?
I don't think we've really taken a look at that yet. We've been looking at all the news stuff and the newspapers and what we've seen just around so far.
When we started to do this, I talked to my mom a little bit about it because she does work for MRL. And she said that they did have people come out and do tests on it. And what they said, that everything was fine and it wasn't going to cause a lot of health problems. So they did have people out there testing the pollution that it did put off.
Would you move away from the train outside of 20 feet just to see where you might have some pollution fall on?
Well, so when we did our control, we originally went to We went like kind of by the north side by Greeno Park, that main, train Xing right there. So we went there, and then there were no trains coming by, so we stayed in that area and just took samples, and that we made that our control. So we were near the train yard, but there were no trains going by, every day, normal like morning traffic. So that's all we really got from that, but we didn't actually go away from the train and take different data, because we were just we needed to get as much as we could from as close to the train as we could. So we did not. That's, yeah.
Your control and train tests all done on the same day?
Different days, but like same weather conditions, same spot every time, same distance.
Do you think that maybe one of those days that you tested the train, the air quality could have been worse that day, and that's why it went higher?
Actually, when we did our control and the coal train, the standing coal train, those were done on the same day. And the normal freight train was on a different day.
Right, thank you.
There's one.
So you said you guys have been doing a lot of research on like pollution and the effects of it on the environment. How big of an area does the coal dust and the pollutants from it affect?
Well, the train moves from like through Missoula, the main railway, all the way up through Washington, and
Away from the train, like you guys did the standing, where the coal train was standing, how big of an area, would that affect?
We personally didn't test it, but from some of the research that we did, people are concerned about it does spread all the way throughout Missoula and throughout the areas surrounding the train tracks, because they do go in many different directions.
And then in part of the pollution studies we did see, it does seem that it spreads and it will affect like our whole downtown area it would hit and throughout.
I mean, you could see like how concentrated it was just being there without it moving and being windy. So I mean, even when it's windy, those particles might spread out a little bit, but I mean, those concentrations are so high that you can tell it's going to affect air quality, for couple, who knows how far. We didn't test that. It's something we could have improved on, but just by those concentrations, you can tell that it would affect it.
All right, thank you.
All right, so that is it for our presentations.
So just a couple of things. So we do have the awards for best posters picked out already, so that'll be announced after lunch. So Subway has catered our lunch today, so hopefully you guys like sandwiches. We got turkey, roast beef, ham. Hey vegetarians, we've got a couple of vegetarian options out there for you also. We did a weather check. It's perfect out there. So, well, wait a second. We got to do some stuff before we release you guys, okay? So hold on just 5 minutes, all right? So first thing we have to do is the judges have to go early. So some of the judges have to go back to work. And so what we're going to do is we're going to recognize our judges real fast, and then we're going to get a group photo of the judges. And last thing before we start announcing the judges, if you haven't filled out your cards, there's some really killer gifts out there that we're going to do some drawings on, okay? So be sure and fill out your cards, drop it in the box out there, and chances are pretty good that you'll get one of these killer gifts. So, you ready to announce some judges? You want me to announce it and you do the, okay. So let's, hey guys, we're going to announce the judges one by one, and let's acknowledge them and the time that they've taken to evaluate your presentations and to spend the morning with us. So Kim Davitt, American Lung Association. Jen Fowler, Physics Department. Ben Schmidt, Missoula City County Health Department. Heidi Miley, KECI TV. And then Nancy Mara, University of Montana. All right, so thank you judges very much, and if you want to stick around just for a second so we can get a group photo and we'll let everybody go out for lunch. This is Dr. Earl Adams. He is the director of the Montana Science Fair, and he's going to say a few words about the Science Fair and also the National Science Fair that he just got back from in Los Angeles last week.
I just want to do a quick plug in for our science fair. We typically have a Montana State Science Fair every year about mid-March, where we invite everyone all from all the regions. There's 4 different regions in Montana that participate. They all come here to the Adams Center to present their data from middle school all the way through high school. So I just kind of want to throw it out to you guys since summer's fast approaching. Now that you had a little bit of experience here with the air toxics program, if you're interested in doing some scientific research and you have some ideas and you want to kind of relay it to your teacher, think about that for the summer, because what we do is Montana, state of Montana, and all the other states in the country as well, we have these state science fairs, and we pick winners to come in all the categories, and typically we take our state team to what it's called the Intel ISIF. This is a national science affair, and it's kind of co-sponsored by Intel. And we just got back from it this year. It was in Los Angeles. Next year it'll be in Pittsburgh. It rotates around to different cities each year. And so this is kind of the big, what we call the big place where everything comes together with all the science fairs in the nation. About 1,800 students from 70 different nations. Now it's international. So countries from all over the world are coming into this science fair to compete for about $5 million of prizes, full scholarships, all the way from scientific areas from astronomy through plant science. Basically all the physical and life sciences are represented here. And this past week we took 12 people from Montana, and we like to keep bringing more each year. If you make it and you qualify to go, it's our responsibility to pay your way there and get you there and to compete at the Intel ISIF. So if you're thinking about projects, key dates, mid-March, talk it over with your teacher. If there's some ideas that you want to run by them, they'll get in touch with us. You can always just Google the Montana State Science Fair. We have a web page there. It gives you the key dates and kind of gives you the lowdown about what it's more about and some of the details. So keep that in mind as summer's coming and you may be interested in trying some research ideas. And we'd love to have you try out for it. Thanks.
How much money did the students win at the State Science Fair this year?
The State Science Fair or the ISIF?
Whitefish Kids?
We took 13 students. 2 brothers from Columbia Falls won $1,000 in a 4th place category. So the top prize at ISIF was a $75,000 award for a student who worked at the UCLA Med School Cancer Research. So there was a lot of top-end prizes and about 12 full scholarships to West Virginia University and Drexel University and a few other ones that they were given out to students. So about $5 million of prizes. So think about it over the summer.
So we were supposed to do some more gift giving before we went to lunch, but we were running short on time. But I'd like to recognize the poster judges that evaluated the posters out there and bring them up one at a time. And so these are the ones that evaluated your posters, and if you got a good score on it, then these are the folks that you thank, and if you got a bad score, then, well, you know. So let's bring them up one at a time. So the first one is Mary French. Luke Montrose. Matt Ferguson. And then our head poster wrangler, Carolyn Hester. Cool hats.
Thanks for the hat.
So next thing we like to do is bring up the teachers that make this possible. And you know, we're very, very fortunate to work with some awesome teachers, and without them, this wouldn't happen. So, and maybe they don't know any better because they keep working with us year after year after year. So first one we'll bring down, how about Brock Hamill from Corvallis High School. So Brett Taylor, Sentinel High School. Melissa Henthorn, Hellgate High School. And last but certainly not least, Dave Jones, Big Sky High School. All right, I'll get in this picture. All right, thank you. Okay.
What do you want to do
Take it
first?
away.
You want to take it away?
How about the drawings?
You do the raffle drawings?
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Okay, and you've got the gifts?
Yeah.
You want me to hold the gifts?
Yes.
Okay.
So you know who's who.
You're going to start with it.
Okay, these winners are for it's the raffle. If you filled out an admissions postcard with your name and address, they were just drawn randomly. Kind of some fun gifts. So we have 3 winners. Alicia Asved, Caleb Horton, and Bailey Burt. And the prizes are very stellar lab goggles, awesome, killer lab goggles with University of Montana on them. And then the last raffle prize goes to Paul Alsop. And you also get some awesome killer lab goggles and a lab coat. So, budding scientists. And then I'll let Carolyn announce the winners for the posters. Great posters this year.
All right, so we're going to... Here, let's do it in a second, okay? We had some awesome posters this year. Basically, I believe we had 14 posters, and Luke is going to go ahead and announce third place.
Third place poster, diesel engines versus gas engines. Maddie, Miranda, Thor, and Alex.
Oh, go ahead and go over there.
How much is it? How much is it? Like $700?
What?
75?
I don't know. What's the prize?
$75.
It's on that sheet, I believe. It's one of those sheets, I don't know.
All right, second place, Bethany and Bearer. Air quality of homes with 3 different heaters. Awesome poster.
Hold on a second. This reminds me of something. We have a new award this year for the student that asked the most questions, so.
Aren't we supposed to take photos?
Award. Right now for year 11.
All right, all right.
hold that for me? Okay, for the grand prize on the posters this year, the poster was titled How Air Quality Changes While Burning Different Types of Wood. Sherry Clark, Hannah Gale, and Rebecca Jacquith. Don't you want all the poster people up here for a photo?
Yeah. So hold on a second, ladies. But before you sit back down, let's bring the poster people up here and we'll get a group photo real fast. Poster winners.
For the PowerPoint presentations, starting at third place from Sentinel High School, radon levels at Sentinel High School, J.C. Hartz, Darcy Jepka, and Jess McMillan. Come on down. All right, second place from Sentinel High School. How do coal trains affect air quality? Robbie Levengoff, Kagan Kemenchi, Rachel Fisher, and Lizzie Sorsney. Come on down. All right, and the last one from Corvallis High School, first place, scientifically proven. Everett Ryan, Jessica Radmacher, Teeson Lewis, and Sarah Grenfell, come on down. Let's give these guys a round of applause. Good job, guys. Hand out the goggles, Tony. Goggles. Oh, yeah.
So we're almost to the end. And one person we'd like to recognize also is Desiree Ware. So Desiree, could you just come down here real fast? And Desiree's guarding the sandwiches. So another announcement too. This is Desiree. So just turn around and smile and say hi. Desiree did a ton of work putting this together, along with the team that you see up here. And one thing about the poster judges, you guys also get a pair of goggles too. So that really poster winners. So grab your goggles on the way out. One thing, this wouldn't happen also without the teachers, but also the sponsors. So Montana DEQ, is Bonnie Rouse still here? Oh, there she is. Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you. So everybody, a round of applause for Bonnie. She's with Montana DEQ. And also, we have an NIH grant that supports us also, Science Education Partnership Award. So with that, I would like to thank you guys and thank you for making the 10th Annual Symposium special for us. And drive safe, wear your seatbelt on the way out of here. Thank you.